the ACES Optimus Show with your host, Dr. Craig Morris.
Hello, everybody.
Dr. Craig Morris here. Welcome to ACESOptimus.com, where we are dedicated to optimizing human potential in the clinic of life. We're now getting close to our 20th podcast, and I've been so excited, so happy to have so many colleagues and friends to join me to reminisce a little bit, to learn about their lives and their successes, and get a little inspiration, some ideas of how we continue to improve the quality of our life, get the most out of our life. Today's guest is no exception. It's my pleasure to have with me today Dave Boyer, an athletic trainer par excellence, who has made it to the top of the ladder on multiple levels, really, in the world of sports as an athletic trainer, and then also in the corporate sports rehabilitation area also. He's overcome a number of obstacles, and as he's done that, he's continued to grow. And he's a former teammate of mine with a couple of hockey teams. And so with that, please welcome Dave Boyer to the show.
Wow, Doc. Well, I got to say I appreciate that. You give me a lot of kudos there. I mean, it's pretty special to kind of hook up with you again and help out in any way I can to kind of share the information that you're looking for and how people can get through this hectic thing called life as we make it. So I appreciate you having me on. I saw a few of your podcasts earlier with some of the people we've worked with, which were really impressive. So I'm grateful and happy that we connected again. You reached out and allowing me to be part of this. So thank you very much.
Well, you're very welcome. We have had a couple of our teammates from our hockey days, our NHL days. My very first guest was the great Kevin Weeks, the great K, now the former NHL goalie and now an ESPN announcer for hockey. In fact, I think he'll probably be on tonight. We're still in the middle of our playoffs, and I think he'll be announcing a game tonight, actually, in Las Vegas, I believe. And then also the great sports orthopedic surgeon star, really, of the stars, Doc Rick Lehman. And so we were all kind of a team back then and had some great memories. And you were really, in many ways, Doc Lehman was the head of our group, but you were the hub, and everything went through you. And my first introduction into NHL, and the first person I ever talked to about working with the NHL was a phone call I received from you back in around early 2000, my clinic. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, I do. I really do. I mean, it was a good phone call.
It was.
My whole objective was to obviously do what I was supposed to do and try and help our famous Rick Dudley, the GM of Tampa, who I actually was brought in through the Vipers with him.
Yes.
Create a team that was top notch. And, it's funny because you look at all the stuff that's going on in pro sports now with the stuff we used to do with just 2 or 3 people. They got 15 people now. And I know there's a lot more science to it, but, it was good. It was good. I always think that we were the part of the foundation of the sports science stuff, So, yeah, I called you and, per Duds, it was like, hey, talk to this guy. Let's get going. We want to create the best team, sports medicine team we could. And you were the phone call. So it was good. It was good.
So let's start a little bit back at the beginning, and then we're going to work our way to that. I know, where did you grow up? What state, what city?
I grew up on what's called Harshen's Island in Michigan.
You are. I thought you were a Michigan guy.
Yep. And it's just a little bit north of Detroit, on the water. So it was a good experience there too.
And then from there, you went through your athletic training. But before that, you had a background in sports, right? Were you a wrestler?
I actually, and I don't know how stuff happens, sometimes you just leave your space open for, life to come through you and you stick to whatever's in, you think you like or you're important. But yeah, I grew up playing baseball actually. I played
Mm.
baseball all the way through my high school. I think I dropped out of it because I really didn't like the coach and it just wasn't working. And then when I was in ninth grade, my buddies talked me into wrestling. So I wrestled, took fourth in the state after just 4 years of wrestling, and then went on to college. And it was pretty interesting because it wasn't something that I actually thought I was ever going to do. I'm one of six kids, and I was probably the troublemaker that went through life. And people would look at me and go like, "This guy's he don't have a chance." And I just actually wanted to get out of the house, so I took fourth in the state in wrestling. I got a couple letters from some junior colleges, smaller colleges, and I said, you know what else am I going to do? So I went to college and wrestled, and snaking through that and trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. I thought I was going to do this and this and this, and an EMT, a nurse. I was always interested in the medical stuff, anatomy, and then my buddy called me. He said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Eastern Michigan University for an athletic trainer." And I was like, "Okay, I'll meet you there." So that's how it started, actually. I mean, I always knew about athletic training, but it wasn't anything that I was going to be like, "Hey, that's what I'm going to do." And and it took me some time. I was a welder during school, so I was making some good money back in the old days. So I took a couple semesters off and thought I was going to do that, and then they laid me off, and I said, okay, so what am I going to do? So next semester I went back to school and continued on, and it was I was just telling this story. I wasn't the best students. I was trying to or student. I was trying to figure my life out, and I had this little short little professor. It kind of looks like you a little bit. Had the big gray goatee, and he caught me in the hallway and he said, "Hey, Dave." I mean, they all know us because we're in that same building. And I said, "Hey, how you doing, Dr. Sheard?" He said, "When are you going to get your head screwed on?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "You have one class before you can get into the program." I said, "Oh, really?" He goes, "Yes." And I woke up. It was just that little conversation. I woke up, I went and took the class, finished it, sat in front of the board. They all said, "Congratulations, you're in. Now let's make something of this." And that's how it actually really all started. Because I was one of those lost souls, I mean, obviously, the whole thing we're talking about is life and how to get through it. And it takes those people that you connect to for whatever reason. And that's the importance of communication. It's not to browbeat anybody. It's like to wake people up and say, "Hey, you're there almost, but I can't do it for you. You got to do it yourself." So that's how I really actually finished my bachelor's of science in sports medicine and as an athletic trainer.
Isn't it interesting? I mean, I had a journalism teacher in high school who just off the cuff, she wanted me to be a journalism major. I said, no, I want to go into healthcare. I want to, and so journalism, I played with a little bit in college, and wrote a few articles, but for the most part, I knew where I was headed. And she says, well, you're a good writer. So once you get in healthcare, keep writing. And so with that, when the opportunity arose, I remember what she said, and that's what led me to write my textbook. So I think it's a lesson that, if you're mentoring people, whether it's your children, whether it's your grandchildren, whether it's your students or younger colleagues, that, it's important to speak up and say the things that are on your mind, because very often those one sentence, couple sentences can impact a person's whole life. You just don't know. But the only thing is, it's important to speak it.
Yeah, and I think you can't. This is my experience, anyways. You can't, like I said, browbeat them. You can't say, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
it's like, "You're there, kid." Like, ask them now, not in a negative way, but like, "What are you doing? You're almost there. Like, you just have to do this." And it's up to that individual, whether it's me or someone else, but you raise their attention or their awareness to say like, wow, really? And again, I'm 1 out of 6, and I'm probably the one that, like I said, everybody looked at like, this guy's he's going to be a ditch digger, which is okay. You know, I could be a ditch digger too, but I'm going to dig the best ditch now that I've experienced it. And it's important that what I found is that you can't take it in a negative way, and you can't present it in a negative way. You have to present it to spark that individual's interest, to give them that idea like, oh, maybe I can do this. So you're right. The communication aspect is just a tool to guide the individual, not to criticize.
And you said something there that I think really epitomizes what we're trying to emphasize here in these podcasts. You said there's nothing wrong with being a ditch digger, and I dug my share of ditches because I worked as a plumber's assistant in college. But you're right. What you said is, but if I'm going to do that, I'm going to dig the best ditch. I'm going to dig the best ditch I can. So whatever this is a habit of excellence, right? And this is what ends up taking us, and what I see at a consistent pattern with all my guests. And so I'm so happy you said
yes.
So then
Well, let me tell you one thing. Let me tell you one thing about that. I remember when I was young at the pizzeria place, your first job.
Yeah.
And the boss, this was just a little mom and pop place on Harson's Island where I grew up. And she would always tell me, a job worth doing is a job worth doing well. And I remember it, obviously, the rest of my life after that. And I don't know how it played, but looking back, that's exactly what it is. If you're going to be the ditch digger, dig a good ditch, do what the guidelines are and do your best at it. So a job worth doing is a job worth doing well.
And I like an old Slovak saying that goes like, if you're going to take the fruit, squeeze every drop.
Yes.
You've got it, then get the most out of it. Do the best.
Yes.
And so I think
that's the key. That's the key.
The key thing to a life of excellence and opportunities that arise from that. So let's talk about that. You're an athletic trainer. And so I was taught in school that, chiropractic license, and back in the day, and a quarter will get you a cup of coffee. So it was that. So now you got it. And what are you going to do with it? Because it's not just you can't just sit down and people are going to start writing and sending you checks and asking for your autograph. So it means you're ready to get to work. So what did you do?
I sat down and tried to figure out what I was going to do, and I didn't know the first thing about it.
Right.
And then what happened is while I was going through my practicum and my internship, I don't even know how this happened, but they must have called maybe someplace at the university and said, hey, we need an athletic trainer. And it was AAU wrestling. And I was a wrestler at Eastern Michigan University and then an athletic trainer. So they probably said, hey, this guy's got some opportunities as an athletic trainer. And this was back in the mid 80s now, So I was on Sundays, I was the athletic trainer for AAU wrestling at the local high schools and stuff. Now, AAU wrestling is all the youth stuff, for wrestling, like youth hockey, youth volleyball, it was AAU wrestling. And so I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I went and did it. Every Sunday I would drive to wherever the events were and did it. And then what happened is that guy got to know me really well. He was also the director of youth football and said, hey, we need a trainer on the sidelines at the youth football. And now here I am, I don't know, 24, 25, sitting on the sidelines, working my profession before I ever graduated, and then graduated. And all of a sudden I was working Saturdays, Sundays, wrestling Sundays, Saturdays, football, 2 football games. And it just evolved. And and then I started getting into the clinics, obviously, once I graduated as an athletic trainer inside the clinics. And my first job in the clinic was, obviously, those are 9 to 5 or whatever, Monday through Friday, was at a hospital, and I was in the physical therapy. And it just goes to show me that again, another opportunity. There was two PTs there that whatever, they migrated towards me. They thought I was good, or or mentors who wanted to teach me, and they took me under their wing, and I learned a ton of stuff. So I was working Monday through Friday in the hospital PT center, and then I was working 2 games on football during the football season, and then wrestling started in January, so I'd work Sundays in the wrestling, and then pick up whatever I could on Saturdays. So it was 7 days a week, and I was the athletic trainer. And then I went back and got my strength and conditioning certification.
Yep.
So I did that, and in the meantime, the hospital job, my buddy was actually at an orthopedic clinic, and he was getting ready to go do the like the tier under, like, minor league hockey, AA, or what is it, like the East Coast League. It was under the East Coast League. So
Mhm.
I actually took his job in the orthopedic clinic, and that
I
was
see.
that was probably 1992. So I was working in orthopedic. That's how I got into the sports medicine orthopedic rehabilitation.
I see. By the way, I'm glad you mentioned that CCSP. I think that is for those that are young chiropractors, physical therapists, that are following the show. I really think that this is a very nice thing. I took it also, so I passed the test. And I felt as though it was a very good test, a very good program to learn from, and that it helped to give a little bit more structure to training, to exercise, a little bit more of a
Oh yeah.
sports science background to support it. So I thought it was quite a good program. I enjoyed it also. So I don't.
Yeah, and that's the National Strength Conditioning Association, which is, I
Yeah,
mean, back then they were only, I want to say they were out 10 years, Maybe
you're
they
right.
started in 79 or 83, and I got it in 91. So that whole thing was evolving. But I like you, I thought it might be something of interest and that would be important to me. And then I started thinking, okay, like, this is it. I'm in it now. So what can I do to whatever enhance, or yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah, definitely apply it, but
yeah,
what can I do to build my foundation of my education? And
yes,
that's part of the process of, like, I'm going to go get that CSCS, certified strength conditioning
yeah,
specialist.
yep,
So
yes, fantastic. So then you had to stop down the road there with the Detroit Vipers, a minor league team. How did that come about?
well, when I got into the orthopedic clinic, there was a physical therapist there that I worked under, and I actually took my buddy's spot to work under him. And he was very he's a very unique guy, because he's one of those that just likes to be creative. So I was kind of intrigued by what he was doing, and I really got into kind of figuring out the anatomy and understanding the body a little bit and how it moves, the mechanics. And it was funny because now I'm still an insecure individual back then. So I'm 25, 20. Yeah, I was probably 25, and I was always, like, throughout my whole 25 years back then, I was the guy that stayed in the background, and obviously until my friends pushed me out there into the front. And so I was always a little apprehensive. I would just watch, and I wouldn't blurt anything out. And then one day he kind of dragged me over to the treadmill, and he says, "Tell me what's going on." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, tell me what you see." I said, "I don't know what I see." He said, "Good, now go home and figure it out." And I went home, and I didn't want to, I came back, and I didn't want to look like I didn't know what I was doing. And that was the second phase of me and my education. It's like, wait a minute, this guy's like testing me. And you start growing up, 25, 26, or whatever it is. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And that's where I really started getting into some of the biomechanics of it, because I didn't want to look stupid in front of this guy. And he trusted me. And it was kind of funny because a couple years later, he was working with Isaiah Thomas with the Pistons. And we worked in teams. There was a physical therapist, there's an athletic trainer, and then there was a exercise tech or specialist or aide. And he would actually leave. We would have 5 or 6 patients there, and he would go and work with the Pistons. And he would leave me, and back then, it was all PT stuff. And he would say, "You can do it." I said, "You can't leave me here. Like, I only been out of school for 2 or 3 years." And he's like, "You'll be fine." Well, he took off, so I had no choice. And you know what? I jumped right in. I didn't hurt anybody, and people liked it. And then it evolved. And he ended up going with the Pistons. And then the trainer came to him and said, "Hey, we need a strength coach." And this guy said, "Go get Dave." So I would do the clinic, and then I would do the strength and conditioning with the Detroit Vipers.
So it's another example that if when we're learning, if we don't have experience, we don't have confidence on ourselves. But if our mentor has confidence in us, you can do it. Then we say, "Oh, all right. Well, I guess I can then." And then we go ahead, because it's not that we have confidence, but they have confidence in us. And that's what we need to get going and take the next step. We're going to be right back after this word.
Thank you so much, Doc. Are you an NHL fan? Would you like to be? Well, I'm Kevin Weeks, former NHL goaltender, current NHL analyst on ESPN, the NHL Network. And I've got an outstanding new podcast for you. Whether you're a diehard hockey fan, a casual hockey fan, or potentially a new hockey fan, be sure to check us out at Patreon at The Inside Edge. You'll find us there. We've got a lot of great interviews, one-on-ones, exclusives with a lot of people around the game, from coaches to general managers to players to agents, and we'll take you inside the game and behind the scenes. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks so much.
Okay, we are back with Mr. Dave Boyer, the great athletic trainer of multiple professional sports teams. And we were just talking about what led you to the Vipers. So then were you initially involved in the sports and conditioning, the conditioning side of it?
Yeah. So what I did is my buddy got me in there because the Vipers head athletic trainer needed some help to do some strength and conditioning. So I would go out there and, because the Vipers were only 4 miles away from where the clinic was. So they kind of connected to each other in the sense of, yeah, we'll send Dave out there, but, we're going to pay Dave, you're going to pay us, kind of thing. So I would go out there for a couple hours every day to do the conditioning, strength and conditioning stuff. Then I would go back into the clinic and finish up in the afternoons. And that was my role. And then that kind of blew apart. So the Vipers wanted me as a strength conditioning coach. So I actually used them to go to a different clinic to get a job. And, they did that little barter system. And I actually spent more time out there with the Vipers and kind of worked a little bit to help the trainer too. So I would go out there and do a little, rehab stuff. And then I would do strength and conditioning. And then I would, in the afternoon, when like the high school kids got out, I would shoot over to the clinic and do the rehab, in the clinical setting. And then what happened is the head trainer got a job with the New Jersey Devils. So then they were looking for a head trainer. And then Rick Dudley, the GM, he was for the Vipers.
Yeah.
Way before you met him.
Yes.
He said, "We want you to be the trainer." And I said, "Well, I'm in the clinic, so I don't know how I don't know how this is going to work and travel and stuff like that." And so what they did is they set up a system with the clinic. They would pay the clinic, and then the clinic would pay me. And I was actually converted into the head strength conditioning coach, head athletic trainer. And I spent 5 seasons out there. And then obviously after the first season, they're like, "Okay, Dave, you're coming in full time. Bye-bye clinic." And then I was those 2 roles. And then I was just working and traveling and doing all the stuff with the Vipers, which is the hockey team.
And then what happened, I know, in I think it was for the 1999-2000 season, the Tampa Bay Lightning got purchased And the new owner of the team was also the owner of the Detroit Pistons, right? And of the
Yep.
Vipers. And so,
yep, he was the famous Mr. Bill Davidson.
That's right. And he took his whole leadership team to Tampa suddenly, right?
Yes, he did. He did. And we all went down there, and it was, I mean, nobody, I don't know, say nobody, but I never imagined I would be in pro sports. Like, that thought never crossed my mind. Never, ever crossed my mind. I didn't go to school to be the head trainer for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
Like, or any NHL team or any basketball team or any football team. I mean, and it goes back to what I was saying, you have to, there's so much stuff that comes through you energetically and opportunity wise as a energetic person, that you have a choice whether you want to attach yourself to it or not. And you can attach it negatively and say, oh, they really made me mad, and it can destroy you, or you can look at it as an opportunity. And we got to Tampa Bay, and the funny thing is, all I ever wanted to do was live in Florida. And it was like for 10 years before I got to Tampa, it was like, man, it would be nice to live in Florida. But you get so wrapped up in trying to create your life and get your job and, provide for a family and support each other and your family, that, you kind of push that stuff aside. And here I was going to Tampa Bay and in Florida and going to be the head trainer for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, that drive down there, like, I can't even explain it. It was like, what am I doing? How did I end up here? And again, you attach yourself to things or people that are offering opportunities, and you have to decide whether they're good or bad,
Well, yeah, we've talked on several occasions in prior podcasts now where people were just busy working, doing their best, trying to improve themselves, trying to improve their lives, and didn't realize all of a sudden they looked up and things were much better. They had new opportunities, but they weren't trying to have these big ideas and these big goals necessarily. They were just busy trying to get by, trying to have a good idea and to improve themselves a day at a time. And all of a sudden they look up and things are different and their opportunities arise. You're a perfect example of exactly that.
Well, the thing is, for me, is like, it's like life is just a board game. If you look at it as that, and it's like, you're trying to win in it, but you don't have to. You got to go through the process. You got to go and land on, to buy the railroad track, or go down the chutes and ladders. And you got to understand that, for me, anyways, it's the process, and it will be clouded over because you're into all this responsibility. But you're right. If you wake up one morning and you say, "Holy smokes! Like, here I am." Like, it's just another opportunity for you to succeed in a direction that's actually, I feel it's actually laid out for you. But as a human being, we kind of corrupt it. We kind of like, oh, I'm going to make this kind of money, or I'm going to do this, and we lose. Again, when I speak, it's only from my experience, but I think we lose track of what this game is supposed to be. And it's supposed to be enjoyable. You're supposed to, associate and connect and have relationships, and like yours and my relationship, and treat people the way they're supposed to be treated, and not be corrupted by the villains of the energetic fields that are trying to pull on you. And I don't think anybody, if you're happy with what you're doing, things will come your way to take you where you're supposed to be, and you have to realize that it's like, just because someone pays you $1 million doesn't mean it's going to be the right direction. So why are you going there? If, like, when, again, I go back to when I was going to Tampa and I was driving down I-75, it was like I was floating. Like, looking back on it, I was so excited. I knew it was right. I knew that's where I wanted to be. And I just let that happen. I just let it happen. And yes, you look up and you go like, how did I end up here? But you should actually look up every day and go like, where am I so I can capture what the enjoyment is in that day-to-day process.
So then you're in Tampa, and you were you there for about 4 seasons?
Three seasons.
3 seasons. And that's where we met. We became friends, we became colleagues, and we formed what I thought was an excellent team, which was a team that was rebuilding. We had the brilliant GM. Now I think he's pretty much legendary in Rick Dudley, because he's organized several teams. He's been the mastermind doing the trades and the acquisitions through the draft for them, Chicago Blackhawks, certainly the Florida Panthers, who won the last 2 Stanley Cup championships, but also up in Montreal. And so it was quite an interesting team, and it was quite an interesting time. I have to say that we had a chance even to see one of the great stories in NHL history with a player who had already been out of hockey in Martin St. Louis, who was out of hockey. Duds brought him back in, gave him a pretty paltry contract, and with a 3-year contract in the 3rd year, he was voted the most valuable player in the league, and now becoming a Hall of Famer. And right now he's coached for the Montreal Canadiens, who are in the 2nd round of playoffs as we record today's treatment. So we saw all sorts of amazing stuff.
Well, it's interesting because Duds is and everybody's always like, I'm not a scout, I mean, hockey players, I could coach hockey every day of the week from the couch, but you get on the sidelines, you're like, holy smokes, like, this is unbelievable. It's crazy. But Martin St. Louis, this is the story and listen, I'm not in on these stories. I just hear stories, so I don't want to spread rumors, but you're right. He was out of hockey because Calgary told him, and I tell this story to some of these young players that I work with, because they all say the coaches says I'm too short, I'm not big enough. Anyways, he was bought out, from what I understood, from Calgary. I believe it was Calgary. He was out of the league. They kind of bought his contract and said, get out of here. And Duds actually picked him up for cheap.
I know.
Cheap.
I know.
I think it was a 2 or 3 year deal.
And
then he was a scoring champion, and he ended up getting this big deal his 4th year in, and the rest is history. And I always tell these people, it's like, if you are interested in what you're doing, you will search for information to make you better, whether it's a player, a doctor, a trainer, or whatever that is, because that will become a passion for you because it's interesting to you. So I can only assume that Martin St. Louis was like, listen, I'm going to prove all these guys wrong, and that's my interesting aspect. And the information is, I'm going to go work my butt off, and this is how I got to do it. And he created that, but it was out of a passion, I can only assume, for really what he wanted to do in his life.
His rock iron determination and passion and determination. It's such a great life story and example, and it's continuing as we watch it now to become the head coach for the storied Canadiens, who, for those that are not hockey people, have won more Stanley Cups than any other team by far. And
he is probably, not to interrupt you, but he is probably the only coach that was coaching a junior hockey, like teenagers, that was called up to the NHL. He was in Vermont, from what I understand, was coaching, because I used to train some of these kids that used to play against him. And obviously some of these coaches and people are ex-NHL guys, but he was coaching like his son's 16U team or something like that. And Montreal said, hey, why don't you come up here and try this? And look at where he's at, 4 years later now?
Yeah, it's amazing, and he's doing such a fantastic job.
He is, and he's always was a good player. He's a good person.
He was a great person to be on the team. So you spent then 3 years with Tampa, and then you moved over, and you spent a year or two, also then
2 years.
2 years with the Florida Panthers, which was just a continued growth and opportunity with a little different group. Still, Dudley was the general manager because he had moved over to the team, because that's pro hockey, that's pro sports. Yeah,
Well,
and
he moved over, and then Lehman went with him.
so
And you know what? They asked me, and I said, listen, you guys brought me in here. I'm committed, and you know what? I trust you guys, and I went with them.
so you put 2 years in with the team there, and I was with you also, and so we had
Mhm.
a couple more good years all working together as a team.
Right.
And
We had to bring over the director of rehabilitation from the Tampa Bay Lightning. You
yes,
know,
well, I loved it
so
then.
that's what that phone call was too. Remember that?
That's right. And again, I think it's important because there was a team chiropractor, and
Yes.
it's local in Florida, because I was in the Los Angeles area. I was in Torrance, California. Instead, you remember, you guys you'd have tough cases that weren't responding, and you'd fly them out to me and give me a week to figure out what was wrong and get a plan, get them on the way to recovery, and then ship them off back to you. And I think it was good because it gave them a chance to get out of town and not be harassed by everybody, and we could just focus on getting them better, figure out the problem, and then send them back to you with a plan. And it worked really, really well, actually. It was a really good plan, and I enjoyed it tremendously. It was hard work, which was not a problem, because you and I weren't afraid of hard work. Even when we were out on the road with the team, we were from like 7 a.m. till midnight working on players.
Yep.
You and me, and we'd patch them up, kept them going, and get them ready for the next game, and just drop into bed dead, and then do it again.
Yeah.
But it was great.
It was great. I remember, we would send them out there, and then you and I would talk, obviously, because you're not flying back and forth. But I learned so much from you. And again, it's because you stay open-minded to opportunities and connections of people that you're interested in. But I learned so much for you that I could actually take a little bit of what you did and carry it a little bit while you weren't there, not to the extent that you would, but you would explain so much to me that it would be like, oh, we have to do this and we have to do that. And again, it stimulated the biomechanical stuff that I was interested in too. With in fact, I still do the Yonda crunches with with pretty much all of the clients I work with. And it gave me a different perspective of how important it is to, one, have the right people in the right seats on the right bus, but how much you could learn from the people on the bus like yourself to extend the care and extend the professionalism. And what it did, it actually made the players a little bit more comfortable that they were being taken care of the right way. And, for you to teach me some of the stuff that you were doing, and the trust that, I could carry it a little bit further into their, and keep them on the ice, was a blessing for me. And like I said, I still use the stuff. I still, hands-on are key for me. Everybody wants to do stim or these suction cups or the needles, and that's all fine and dandy, but I don't think you can get as much as you can get by just feeling and having that relationship, or that, that resonates, the energy between the patient, client, athlete, trainer thing. And a lot of that stuff, I gotta thank you, because you offered that to me and I accepted it and kind of live by it now. So I thank you very much.
I really appreciate you saying that. I'm honored that you say that, and I appreciate it very much. We're going to take one more break, and we'll be right back with the great Dave Boyer. Hey, everybody, please check out our upcoming ACES for Me courses. These will be held in Dallas, Texas, between May and November of this year. All DNS courses. We hope to see you there. Okay, we are back with Dave Boyer, and we're just continuing on his lifeline, his chronology. After you finished with Florida Panthers, all of a sudden you had another opportunity, and you're working not in NHL now, but now in the National Basketball Association with the Detroit Pistons. So tell us a little bit about your experience. I remember we were in touch a lot about that, and you telling me it was a very different world that you had moved into coming from the NHL.
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, the guy that I was telling you about earlier, he was still with the Pistons, and he's a mentor to me also. And he said, "Listen, come on up here. You know, the Panthers done. The lockout was coming, so everybody was losing jobs. And I had a clinic in Florida that I said, okay, I'm coming up. So I spent 1 year in the PT clinic that I opened up, sold that, and then went up to the Pistons to work with him. And it was definitely a different experience. Like the stuff that you go through with hockey and blue collar and banging across the boards, and then you go into a different culture, you go into a different environment, a different sport. It took me a little bit to understand like what is going on here, because things were run a little bit differently, in the sense of, in hockey the coach is the coach and you do what you're told. In basketball it was more of a unit, but everybody had a say into what's going on. So there was a little bit more of me trying to understand, like, how do we do that when this and that and this and that, when in hockey it was like, no, this is what you're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. So I had to sit back a little bit and understand that. And again, I went in there as assistant strength coach, assistant trainer under my mentor. And I spent 6 years there.
And I remember you telling me this is so different because first they only have half the players on the team.
Mm-hmm.
So it was less work, and it was different work.
It was less work. There was a lot more different injuries, obviously, but there was 15 players compared to 25. So it was easy for me. I mean, you almost feel like we didn't need 3 trainers there, and 2 strength coaches, me, and I could have done it all myself, which that's what we did in hockey. And it's like, so it was a lot more standing around. So it really played on me energetically, because like I go in there, I want to work on people, I want to do this, I want to stay busy. And it was like, it wasn't as manually exhausting for me. And that's how I always grew up. That's how I always did it. So I had to spend a little bit more time reflecting on myself and saying, okay, so this is a different environment. Let's slow down. Let's start thinking a little bit more, in the sense of, learning from my mentor, or looking more. And I had to redirect into, okay, I need to, instead of this downtime and letting my mind go crazy, I got to use this downtime to kind of figure out the environment, the learning aspect, and what I can take from it, just in case I want to go somewhere else, or I move on, or do this. So I actually used it as a learning experience, and grabbed it a little bit more, biomechanics and soft tissue stuff and hands-on stuff that I could grab, and to understand the game a little bit more. Obviously, I'm not a basketball guy, but for me, every sport's a sport.
Yeah, and each one has its own unique nature, and the athletes are a little bit different in their personality, and the way they interact with their teammates is a little bit different, and it takes a while to start to feel and feel comfortable with that vibe, with that cohesion, and the way this team kind of defines itself. Even it's a little bit
absolutely.
It's even a little bit different among the teams. Certainly, for example, in the NHL we saw, but each has their own way of figuring it out. And
absolutely.
And with hockey, I think the better they figure it out, the better team they become, because it's so quick and it's so instinctive that they have to be on the same vibe, on the same line, emotionally, mentally was there, so that they know what the other one is thinking and where to be next. It's the ultimate team sport for me. Even, I mean, basketball is also so much so, but to me, of all the sports I've been involved with, hockey is the ultimate team sport because of this.
Well, there's a lot different in the sense of what you're saying. Yeah, because basketball is a lot slower than, hockey, skating up and down the ice. I mean, these guys are running, but
yes,
you're not throwing from one corner to the other corner in basketball. You got to hit it 3-4 people, where hockey, you can make that pass and they can drive the lane and, or drive the ice and score that. I mean, it's definitely a lot different as far as the mechanics of the sport itself, and the people, in the sense of the injury aspect also, what you're suffering in basketball compared to hockey.
Very different. Yes. So then you did that for 6 years, and then And then what was next? Where did you go?
Well, I did that for 6 years, and then I'm sorry, what was that?
After you're out of pro sports, and now it's like, what's next for Dave Boyer?
Well, there wasn't much next because I had to go back into the clinics. I tried to get another job in hockey, and you're getting older in the sense of people are getting their little buddies in there or whatever that is, and so I still tried to get I had an offer in Minnesota, but then it fell through with the Timberwolves. Again, my buddy went there, or my mentor went there, and then so I went back into the clinics, and I spent 5 years in one clinic, and then they let everybody go. And then I went to the hospital-based orthopedic clinic, and then COVID came. And, that whole debacle of how that thing evolved. But again, you get older, you understand it, and you just don't make a big deal out of it in the sense you don't have any control over that. So I was sitting around in COVID. And my daughter had passed away, and I was kind of going off the deep end, and I was like, okay, so what, I got to get myself back organized here because there's too much time, and I can't handle too much time, downtime wise. And so what I did is this is actually when I determined that I wanted to do something, and I went back to school during COVID and got my master's in sports psychology. So I did that in 17 months. And what I evolved it into, and that was, I graduated 2021, 2022. And I started with exercise innovation. So I started evolving a company, was really based on just trying to design some appropriate biomechanical equipment, smaller piece of balance board, stuff like that. A weighted vest for the Yanda crunches kind of thing. And then actually evolved into a strength conditioning, mental performance combination online services. And that's what we're evolving it into now. So it's gone through its process. And it's actually, we're getting ready to probably launch it in about 2 months. And what it does is you could get an online off-season conditioning program for your sport. And what I'm doing is I'm actually creating a mental performance process through personality, and then understanding responsibility, perception, perspective, trust, truth, mindset, meditation, controlling your emotions, controlling your thoughts. And so I'm designing about a 10 segment learning process for mental performance. And that's we're going to probably launch that in about 2 months. So that's what I did during COVID and now I'm back into the sports medicine orthopedic. I did a little bit of hockey stuff in there with a hockey training facility. And then my doctor friend called me up and said, hey, I need a director. So I'm doing that also.
So then you took your background in sports and athletic training, in rehabilitation. You go to back to school. You get a master's degree in sports psychology. Was it
sports psychology?
Sports psychology, right? So then now all of a sudden now you've got another whole set of tools to understand better the athlete, and then now you've taken that into now the corporate world to level. And you're integrating all of those decades of experience, knowledge into a way to try to now help to optimize athletes to the next level.
Absolutely. And a lot of it actually is coming from the mindset of what's controlling your physical being, which is your mental capacity and resilience to understand whether it's an external factor or an internal injury, and going through the grief cycle and a lot of these kids and a lot of these young athletes, nobody's ever taught them that. And the reason I got into that is because, I was a pretty good baseball player. I made the all-star every team until I got to a point where they're throwing curveballs in whatever it was, 1980. And I was like, holy smokes. But no one ever sat there and said, listen, it's going to hit you one time out of 1,000 pitches. And it's going to only hurt for 5 seconds, So what I found is that a lot of these young athletes don't understand whether it's an injury. Like I have a whole online program for ACL recovery, return to sports. and it understands that you have to go through these cycles, these 5 stages of grief, in order to get to acceptance, to really get into the direction of what you want to go in order to get back and return to play. So the mental performance aspect of all of that stuff, based on your personality or temperament, is a key component for you to get through an injury, or for you to really have a finer direction of the goal you want in your sport to what you want to achieve. And nobody, it's all piecemeal. Like, if you want a mental performance coach, you got to go over here. If you want an athletic trainer to do your rehab, you got to go here. If you want a strength coach, you got to go here. And none of them are combining, and nobody's given this information. So my whole objective was to combine it all together.
Well, I really like what you're saying. When I worked on the PGA Tour and the European Tour in golf, we were told it was part of a team, and I joined the team. And so there were certain rules and ways to work with it as a team with our players. And we had 25 of the best golfers in the world that we followed and took care of. But one of the hard rules was anything regarding the emotional side of the sport and performance is outside of our area. We have sports psychologists who are, and it's different. After hockey, it was so different to be in golf because each one of these guys is their own boss. They're not part of the team. They've chosen their team, and they're in control of hiring and firing their team. They are the GM. They're the president. So there were different sports psychologists that would follow the tour, and they would work with different players and all of that. And that was outside of our purview. And I didn't agree with it.
I wouldn't either.
I wasn't looking to go into necessarily the deepest aspects. And I'm sure that they had so much more experience in sports psychology than I did. But my professor, Professor Yanda, said, remember, there's only one locomotor system, one nervous system, and that we can't separate them. And in fact, I had another mentor who was an orthopedic surgeon and a psychiatrist. He did 2 residencies, and he had a saying that the only way you can separate the soma from the psyche is with a guillotine, because he said, it's all one and it's all integrated. And if you try to separate them, it doesn't work. It has to be functionally integrated. The emotions, the thoughts, the concerns, the fears, all of that with all of the other body systems to make one locomotor system that's optimally functional.
Well, the way I look at it, just like you said, I mean, you have to integrate it. And if you're working on them physically and they go to the guy for the psychological aspect, how often are you able to talk to each other? When in actuality, if you're sitting there next to each other and integrating it, that guy can kind of give you information like, hey, doc, when you work on this guy, remember, maybe you want to implement like, hey, this pain is only going to be here for a short period of time. So you're working on his psyche through a connection, because you guys are all on the same bus. And it's like being in the boardroom, everybody's got a vote, but you're all talking amongst one another to create what's better for the company. And that's what athletes are. They're their own, like you said, they're their own individual person. So it's their company. And you should be, if you're going to take care of them, you should have the resources for them, and you should have all of the medical things on the same page. And that's what made it so interesting when I first connected with you, is like, you gave me all that stuff that you were doing to kind of keep the process going. And if it's something went astray, you're only a phone call away, I mean, and we have to realize that these are small little companies, whether it's a youth athlete or whether it's a pro athlete, and we all, medical wise, we should all be on the same page, so we can make this individual, give him the success that he wants and strives to achieve. But because all he's doing, he's the engine. You're the oil, I'm the piston, or I'm the gas pedal, or whatever that is. We have to make sure that, the 4 wheels are on the ground kind of thing, so he can drive forward. And it's unique, because I haven't really found anybody that can that has the and not to toot my own horn, but the sports psychology, the athletic training rehab, the strength and conditioning all as one unit. And it's interesting because when I talk to these people, whether I'm working them out or injury wise doing rehab or separately for the sports psychology, I understand a lot more where they're at. One, because I've been there, but two, I know those processes through all three of those specialties. And my hair stands on my ends on my arm because it's just such a unique thing, and I've gained so much experience from the people that I've come in contact with that I utilize it. And it's now I have my head up going like, how did I end up here? But now I know why.
Right. Well, how fortunate. Imagine for those in the audience if they had children who were junior athletes with lots of potential and they had an injury. How fortunate would you be if you found out that you were going to be able to send your child to Dave Boyer with somebody who had these years of experience in different professional sports, in sports psychology, in different aspects, and all of a sudden that would be the person. That's the person that you would want to be taking care of them all through the injury, all parts of it, not just specific injury itself. Instead, you want the person who is well-rounded, grounded, who has the experience and understands it from multiple perspectives. And that's what you give. And I know that's what you're teaching also for your students and those that are with you and working with you. Dave,
absolutely.
We're running out of time. If you have any last final thoughts to share with the audience, I'd appreciate it. What do you have to say?
Well, I would just say that, you know what, like I said, life is a game. You have to understand that each day is an opportunity for you to gather information of the stuff you're interested in that's going to take you to where you want to go as you go through this life situations or these moving your pieces on this board. And it's important that, you know what, there's going to be some things. It's not a straight line up. There's going to be bumps, and you have to be resilient enough to handle the downtimes, whether it's an injury, whether it's, you didn't make the team, whether it's, just in life in general, because sports are just an aspect of the total conduit of life. And that if you can use and shrink it into sports and use it as a life situation, when you get out of there and you understand life, it's going to be a lot easier for you.
I think that's right. We only grow during times of stress. If things are easy, things are soft, things are relaxed, then we relax, kick back, but we don't grow. We grow through stress, through life's challenges. And I think you have shown us some of the challenges that you faced along the way and what you have done to grow and come out on top and continue to grow. And I'm so happy and thankful that you've joined us. And I know that our audience is going to really be inspired by your life story. Thank you for sharing this, Dave. I really appreciate you being on ACES Optimus.
Well, thanks for having me. I greatly appreciate you being part of my life.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor. And for everybody, We'll see you all next time on ACES Optimus. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the ACES Optimus Show. Catch you on the next one.